welcome to my channel. My name is Becca. If you are new here, I just had a baby, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. But if you're new, please subscribe. I make videos about beauty, fashion, lifestyle, and my family. So I've just had my baby. Today is the 11th of July, and I had my baby on July 2nd. So today I'm just going to be sharing his birth story, and you'll get to meet my little munchkin because he's just so cute and perfect. So yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't believe I'm filming this video. I have watched so many of these videos and like thought of the day when I could like film my own like birth story or like my son's birth story. So I guess we'll just jump into it. It's so surreal. Okay, so on July 1st, I went in for an induction. So if you haven't watched my previous video, my 38 to 39 week update, I talk about how I was kind of diagnosed with preeclampsia, and so I had to be induced a little bit early just to protect me and baby. So we went in July 1st. I was scheduled to go in about like 8:30, so we went in at 8:30, and they didn't really start anything until about 10 p.m. So when we first got there at 8:30, we checked in. I had already pre-registered at the hospital, but I still had to like check in at the desk, get into my room, and then I had to like wash with like the sanitary soap so that if anything went wrong during labor, I was already set to go down to surgery. So we did all of that and then kind of got situated in the room, and then at 10 p.m. they started cytotech. So I had already dilated to 1, almost a 2 when I had gone in previously, just because my body had like started naturally getting ready for labor. Choking. So they decided to do cytotech instead of Cervidil. So those are like the two different options to kind of get labor started. So cytotech is a little, I don't know why I'm so like anyway, cytotech is a little pill that they just kind of like insert up there, and it helps your cervix soften and dilate. So I got my first round at 10 p.m. and the nurse, when she first like gave me the first dose, was saying that I can have up to 6 doses, and it's 4 hours per dose. So they do it every 4 hours, and they do it until you dilate to a solid 3 or a 4, kind of like in between that range. And she was like, most first time moms have to go between like 3 or 4 pills, but sometimes you do need all 6. And then we stopped it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's already at like 24 hours. Really hope that doesn't happen, but whatever, we're just gonna go for it. Tyler and I had prayed a lot about the birth and just were trusting in the Lord that it was just gonna, you know, go to his plan. So I got my first dose at 10 p.m. Didn't really feel anything. I tried to sleep, but y'all, hospital beds are so uncomfortable, and this hospital bed was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever felt, so I didn't sleep a wink. And then I got my second dose at, what is that? It would have been 2 a.m. So I got my second dose because I had dilated to like a 2.5, so I was almost there. So second dose, and then she came in to check me again, and that would have put us 2 a.m., 6 a.m. So at 6 a.m. it was, she checked me one time and I was almost a 3. She was like, you're right on the cusp, so we're just gonna do it one more time just to make sure we're like on track with everything. So I did get a 3rd dose of cytotech at 6 a.m. so that was like all night. Did not sleep a wink because also I'm like excited and anxious and like getting ready for birth, so I didn't really sleep at all, which I think is expected. And then at so all of that happened. At 8 a.m. my doctor, or my OB, came to just like check on me and see how things were going. So he came in at 8 a.m. He checked me again. He's like, oh, you're a 3. I'm going to go ahead and break your waters. So he broke my waters at 3. At this point, I still, I didn't want an epidural, so I didn't have an epidural at this point. I actually didn't get an epidural at all, spoiler alert. So at 8 a.m. he broke my waters. I didn't have an epidural when he did this, so I like felt it. It's not bad. It feels like a normal cervical check. He just kind of, you know, went up there and then had like a little thing. You don't feel him breaking the amniotic sac or whatever it was, but you do feel the rush of fluid, and it's weird. It's very warm. You feel like you're peeing yourself, but you know you're not peeing, so it's just a bizarre feeling. So he broke my waters. Oh, the other thing I want to say, the night nurse, she was really, really nice, but when she would do her cervical checks, homegirl would like just, she was like so hard and fast. I was like, oh my gosh. And then my doctor came in, and like, he's a male, and obviously like the female nurse was the one doing the checks previously. He was so much gentler and was like nicely doing that, and like nicely broke the water. So I really liked my OB. So that happened at 8 a.m. So then my Cervitec, my Cytotec would have finished at 10 a.m. And then that's when they would start the next round. So at 10 a.m. they did check me again. I was a 3, almost a 4. So they decided to go ahead and start Pitocin. So at 10 a.m. they started Pitocin, which brings on contractions to start the labor. So we started the Pitocin, and it honestly didn't feel too bad at first. I felt it low, like down there. I felt a lot of pressure, and it did feel like cramping, and it was kind of painful, but not bad. Like, it was very bearable. So I was just chilling, going for it. And then it was probably like 12. Yeah. Right around lunchtime, maybe 11:30, 12, my aunt, my cousin, and my grandmother came to visit me in the hospital, like while I was laboring. And at that point they had started getting a little harder, and then once they got there, the Pitocin had really started to kick in, and I was really feeling the contractions. So the other thing too with Pitocin is every half hour, the level of Pitocin that is being like inserted into your drip increases. So at that point, it had increased however many times that is. I'm still newborn brain, so I don't know. But anyway, every half hour since 10 a.m. it increases, and this was now like 11:30, almost 12. So I was really starting to feel the contractions, and they came in, and I was like trying to muster through it, and I just really wasn't feeling great. So I like went to the bathroom, and I found that like sitting on the toilet, which sounds really weird, but sitting on the toilet like in that position felt good for laboring. I wasn't like pushing or anything, but that position, like kind of with my legs spread, sitting, was the most comfortable through the contraction. So I kind of like went into the bathroom and then was just sobbing because I'm emotional. I don't feel good. It's like really tough. So at that point, I kind of said to my husband, I was like, can you just ask them to leave? Because I just like couldn't muster it. And they were so like loving and kind, so they like very graciously like, of course we're gonna leave, like you should have just said something sooner. And then my aunt came in, gave me a big hug, and just said like, you can do it. And it was just like a little piece of encouragement that I definitely needed from her. So after that like little episode, I went back to the room, and my nurse came in, and she kind of saw me crying. And my nurse, I just have to take a pause, was incredible. I had one labor nurse through all of my labor and delivery. Literally, she was the only one that would come in to check me. She was there with me from the whole time that I labored and through the delivery, and she was incredible. Like, this woman, I have such a special place in my heart for her. We really connected. She was just incredible. Her name is Lacey, so shout out Lacey. You just, girl, made labor and delivery so amazing. So she came in and she kind of sat me down. She was like, hey, what is up? Like, you're obviously feeling a lot of pain. She's like, do you want an epidural? And I said, no, again, because they've kind of asked me periodically throughout this whole process, do you want an epidural? No. Do you want an epidural now? No. Like, very respectfully, like, just kept asking. And I said, no, I really don't want one. And so she kind of asked why. And for me, there was a couple reasons. I said, I hate needles, and the thought of it like makes me nauseous. Like, I really don't like it. I don't like the idea of having it stuck in my back. And she was like, okay, I can understand that. She's like, just letting you know, it's not as bad as you think. She's like, the hardest part is the, you know, like the Novocaine or the lidocaine that numbs your back, and then the needle goes in. And she was like, so it's really not that bad. And I said, the other reason is like, I just want to do it naturally. Like, that's just something that I've wanted and desired, and so I want to stick to that. And she was like, okay. She's like, but just know, if you're suffering and like it's getting really bad, there's no shame in it. Just ask and we can get that for you. So I was like, okay. But I knew in my heart that like I wanted to do it without the epidural, and I was like, I can do this. And she said that too. She was like, if you truly want to do it without it, she's like, you can. She's like, you can do it. So it was really nice. She just kind of like sat me down, like had a good chat, which was good. So then after that, I was like, okay. I kind of like recomposed myself and was just like, all right, I got this. And I think why I had gotten like just emotional and was crying was because it literally had gone from like feeling nothing to like feeling intense contractions, which is what Pitocin does. So I kind of knew that in the back of my mind that like that could happen, and that's what the purpose of Pitocin was. But until you feel it, you don't know. So then Tyler prayed over me as well and was just like, all right, we're gonna, you know, just ask Lord for strength in this time. And it was just amazing. Another quick pause, I have to give an amazing shout out to my husband. I love my husband. Obviously, we're married, we have a baby. But I fell so in love with him during labor, and like fell more in love with him like during that time, and then just like having this new baby. He was so loving and encouraging and supportive, and just like, it was amazing, and just like really led me. I'm gonna like get emotional because I am still very hormonal, but also like this is like, I feel this much love for him and towards him. So he was just amazing, and just like really led us in faith like through labor, like was just constantly praying over me. I had a playlist of like Hillsong Live songs, and he just like kept putting them on repeat, and he knew the ones that like I really connected with or would like kind of sing myself, and so he would like repeat that song, and it was just like, I can't even explain like how in love I fell with my husband. Like I've always been in love with him, but just even more so, like I'm just so thankful and proud to be his wife, and just, he was incredible. He was the best labor partner I could have ever had, and it was just truly, truly amazing, and such a cool bonding experience. So thanks, Tyler, I love you. So that side note aside, I'm like getting emotional. This, I mean, it's your birth story. You're gonna get emotional. So at this point, laboring on the edge of the bed, or standing or sitting on the toilet, was the most comfortable. And the thing was, in between contractions, I felt fine. Like I truly felt like I could breathe, like I felt relaxed. I was like, oh, I feel great. But then like during contractions, it was very, very painful. So one of the other things that they kind of ask you throughout labor too is, what is your pain level? And so my nurse kept asking this as well, and she would say like, so what's your pain level? And truly, like my pain during a contraction was probably like a 7, but when I wasn't having contractions, it was probably like a 2. Like when the contraction was over, it was over, and I felt like I could relax. So I feel like that's what helped progress labor. So they check you kind of throughout this time. Like they come in and check you. I think she was checking me like every couple hours, and I was dilating very quickly. So by like 2 p.m. I was like a 6. So I had started, oh wait, no, that's too late. By like 12 or 1, some of the details are fuzzy because, you know, like it's a blur. But by it was probably like 12. I think it was after my aunt and like family had left. She checked me again, and I had already dilated to like a 6. So I was dilating pretty quickly. So again, she just kind of reiterated too, she was like, just to let you know, you're dilating pretty quickly. So once you get to like an 8, we cannot administer the epidural because it's too fast. And I was like, that's totally fine. Like I'm already at a 6, like I got this, girl. And that was really encouraging too. So I think that's why also, like after we had that little chat where she was like super loving about it, Taylor prayed, and then she checked me, and it was like, oh my gosh, you're already a 6. I was like, I got this, like 4 more centimeters to go, I can do this. So that was really nice. So then at this point, because I had dilated to a 6, they brought in or the nursery nurse came in. So there's a separate nurse for the nursery, like to take care of baby. Like there's a labor and delivery nurse, and then there's like a nurse who takes care of baby. So she came into the room, and she got everything set up. She like turned on the warmer, she like brought in all of her stuff, and it was just like so real. I was so emotional. I was just like sobbing again, and Tyler was like, are you okay? And I was like, yes, it's a different cry this time. Like this time it's excitement because they've done all this. Like the baby is coming, like this is real, like it's happening. So it was just really cool to know that. So that was probably like 12. So then they started checking me a little bit sooner. So probably by like 1 o'clock, 1:31-ish, I was already to an 8. So I was dilating very, very fast, which is fine by me. So the Pitocin was really working. So my body definitely was just like ready to labor. So by about that point, or maybe it was like 2 o'clock. Again, the time is a little fuzzy, but I do know the process. So it was probably like closer to 2 that she had checked me that I was like an 8, almost a 9. So she then at that point stayed in the room. This was my labor nurse, Lacey. And before that too, it was probably like 1-ish, she brought in the medicine ball, or the like exercise ball, and was like, do you want to labor on that? Because I told her, I was like, I find sitting on the toilet the most comfortable. And she was like, well, how about I bring in the like exercise ball, and you can labor on that. It has the same, like you'd be sitting kind of in the same position. So I was like, okay. Let me tell you, that was the best thing ever. I loved laboring on the exercise ball. I felt the most comfortable. I sat on the ball and then like faced the hospital bed. and they like raised it up so I could like lean my arms on it and then just kind of like be sitting and like laboring in that position, and it was amazing. It felt the best. I felt the most comfortable because it was so much pressure down low is where I was feeling the pressure, so to sit on the ball felt really good. The only downside was that they kept losing the heartbeat of the baby, so when they would go to check the baby, I keep saying the baby, but we all know his name is Everett. So Everett, when they would check Everett, his heartbeat would kind of drop when I was sitting on the ball, and they were like, okay, but I just could not labor laying down. Like, laying in the bed was the worst feeling on the planet. Like, I did not want to labor in the bed. Like, walking around felt good, standing, sitting on the medicine ball, but laying down was horrible. So like, that was not good. So then by like 2:30-ish, yeah, it was probably 2:30, because things went very fast from then. It felt like eternity, but then when I think about the timeline, because this truly was the timeline, it was like really fast. So probably about 2:30, she checked me again. She's like, you're a 9. So this is about the time like we're getting ready. At this point, I was definitely in a lot of pain, and this is kind of when I like not totally fell apart, but definitely started losing like my control and felt like I can't do this. Like, I was crying again, like I just felt like I couldn't do it. But they kept reassuring me, and by they I mean Lacey and my husband, because they were both in the room at that point. They were like, you can do this. And I still felt the most comfortable on the medicine ball, but at that point, the baby Everett was so low. When she checked me, she was like, his head is like right there. Like, he is so low, like he is ready to come out. And so because he was sitting so low, when I would sit on the ball, he didn't like that. And so his heart rate would drop, and it wasn't just because I was like in that position, it was because he truly didn't like that position. So she tried to have me lay on the bed, and I was like, I can't do it. Like, it's so painful. So then she, the nurse like had me like be on all fours on the bed and was like, try that. I was like, that wasn't comfortable either. And then I just realized that standing through the contractions was the most comfortable. So those contractions were the worst. That last centimeter felt like an eternity. It was probably like 20 to 30 minutes that I went from 9 to 10, but oh man, it felt like years. Because at that point too, the contractions were so close together, I felt like I wasn't getting a break in between. And at that point too, it'd been I'm like tired, I've been up all night, like you're laboring for a little while, like you're in pain, like it's exhausting to your body. So I wasn't breathing as well, so I did have to get the oxygen. And Tyler was saying like it looked crazy, but like no one was gonna say anything. So basically what was happening those last, like to dilate that last centimeter, I would be laying on the bed in between contractions like with the oxygen mask, and like as soon as I would feel the contraction, I would like jump up out of the bed and like stand to like stand through the contraction, because that's what felt comfortable. And then like as soon as it went over, I would just like lay back on the bed to like hold the oxygen mask and like close my eyes. And he was like, it looked so funny. Like literally I would just go from like sleeping with oxygen mask to like jumping out of bed, like standing for the contraction. So that's just what felt good to me. But I wanted to do it with no epidural. You totally can if you don't want to. It worked. So two, at that point, she was texting the doctor. So throughout the whole time, she was texting my doctor because his offices were connected to the hospital. So if he saw patients up in the office, he can just easily come down. So she's letting him know like, oh, she's at a 9. Hey, she's at a 9.5. And then she checked me again. I was like, can you check me again? Like, I feel like I have to push. And I said that, I was like, I feel like I have to push. I'm pushing and I don't mean to, because at that point, like the contractions were so intense and my body like literally took over. I was like, I have no control. I'm pushing. I know I'm pushing, and I'm like standing. I was like, I don't know what to do. So I laid down. She checked me and she was like, oh yeah, you're at a 10, you're fully dilated. So by 9 centimeters, they had brought in all of the stuff. So the rest of the labor and delivery team, because there's several people in the room when you do deliver, the doctor and a couple other nurses had brought in like the cart with all the stuff and like had gotten everything ready. So then when she had checked me at 10, she was like, oh my gosh. So she had already been texting my doctor, and then it like things were happening so fast that she's like calling out to like the nurse's station. She's like, can we please page, his name is Dr. Mitro, can we please page Dr. Mitro? Like, she is about to have this baby. So it was very, very fast. So he kind of came like flying into the room, like got his stuff on, and they were like, all right, are you ready? So it was just very fast, but I'm glad it was, because it made it more bearable. So he came in at 3 o'clock, like kind of on the dot, and I like got in position to push, and I pushed for 8 minutes, and then baby Everett was born. It's so crazy. So I was like really lucky that I did not have to push for very long. It was 8 minutes of pushing, so that was like really nice. And the other thing that was really cool too is when my doctor came in to start like the delivery process, he was like, oh my gosh, she was like, or he asked the nurse, did she have an epidural? And she said, no, all natural. And he was like, you did it. He was like, was this because it was too late and you couldn't get one, or you just didn't want one? And I was like, nope, I wanted to do it all natural, and I did. And he was like, you go, like, great job. And then like my nurse kept saying that too. She was like, you did it all natural, like, way to go, mama, like, you're a first-time mom, like, you're doing this. It was just, they were so encouraging. And then because this is Oklahoma, they kept calling me like mama and sis, and like, it was really cute. Like, that's just like, instead of saying like I don't know, like girl or whatever you say, like you got this, girl, they would say like, you got this, mama, or like, you got this, sis. And so it was just really cool. They like kept saying, just like reassuring, like, you did this all natural, like, you did this. And it was just, it was cool because it was very like validating in a way, and I wanted to do it naturally, so it was just really nice. So yay. Okay, so after 8 minutes, I pushed baby Everett out and they put him on my chest, and it was just so surreal. Like, I can't even explain. So they put Everett on my chest because we did skin to skin because I wanted to, and he was healthy, so we could. And also I planned on breastfeeding and am breastfeeding. So that is like what they do. And then the hospital and my doctor does delayed cord clamping, so they left the placenta inside of me while baby was on my chest, and they were like getting all of his stuff done. Like, it was kind of crazy. Like, it was a whirlwind. Like, they're checking Everett, they're like suctioning out his mouth, like, he's on my chest, they're like cleaning him off, putting a little hat on him. Like, it was just a lot happening. And then I did have 2 small tears. So after they put him on my chest, my doctor was like, okay, so you do have 2 small tears, so I'm gonna go ahead and stitch those up, but I am gonna numb you first because obviously no epidural, I was not numb for stitches. That hurt so bad because I was so tender at that point from like birthing the baby. Like, any little touch like hurt. So obviously like the pain of a needle being stuck in you down there after you just gave birth, and then also I was just really tender, so like even just like his touch was very, very painful. And so I'm like trying to breathe through that, and I'm like, it's really painful, and he was like, I know, I'm gonna be as quick as I can. So I tore in 2 places. So I tore, and they were both small. He said that to me. He was like, they're really small from front to back. So, you know, front to back, most people tear there. So I did tear there, and then I also tore like very minorly right near my urethra, which is like not good. And he said he was a bit concerned about that tear. He said normally that size of tear, like that amount of tear, you wouldn't need to stitch, but because of the area that it was in, he had to, just to like be safe. And he said we're just gonna have to like really monitor that, because if you can't pee, like, that's really bad. So we just want to make sure that like all that was good. So I did have to get stitched up in 2 small places, but it wasn't bad. And then the whole time that he was stitching me up, they left the placenta inside me, and then when he was done, so it was probably like 15-20 minutes, that's when they like had me push out the placenta and kind of finished up. I'd say too though that like that almost felt more painful than the contract. I don't know, I mean, everything's a blur at this point, so I don't totally remember, you know, like you kind of black out the pain. Like, it's so true. But it was very painful getting stitched up, just because I was so sore, and like I just didn't want to be touched anymore. I was like, just get away from that area, like leave it alone. It's so painful. But it was just so like amazing because I was doing like skin to skin with my brand new baby, and he was just perfect and beautiful and wonderful, and I just loved him so much. And it was just like so emotional. Like, Tyler and I were there like with our new baby, and it was just like so cool. So that all happened. We did an hour of skin to skin before they did anything else, like before they weighed him, before they like wrapped him up, like all of that. So like they truly like black out an hour for just mama and baby to like bond skin to skin. And then after that, they let dad do an hour of skin to skin. So it's just really, really cool. Like, we have that time to just like bond right away, which I think it definitely did. I mean, we were already like so in love with the baby, but it definitely did help. And I just kept saying over and over again, he's so perfect, and he still is so perfect. Like, Everett is the cutest baby I've ever seen, and he's mine. So I just kept saying like over and over again, he's so perfect, he's so perfect. So after those hours, my family came back in to meet him. So they came back in and they like visited for a little bit. We ordered dinner because it was probably like, it was around dinner time. It was around like 4:30ish that they came back. And so we're like hanging out with them, and they were getting to meet the new baby. My cousin Kinley was third to hold the baby, which is what she'd been saying since I got pregnant. We held true to that. She got to be third to hold baby Everett. So that was like really, really cool. So we had that time, and then they decided to leave because our dinner came, and that was about 5 o'clock. So the nurses came back in. Like, there's constantly nurses at that point checking, because like obviously it's a lot happening. And I had gone to the bathroom because that's like another like really important thing is that you use the bathroom. So I'd gone to the bathroom like right before my family came and like went like assisted to the restroom and like went pee normally. Like it was normal, it was fine. I had bleeding, but like it was normal. So I went to the bathroom and then visited with my family, and then they left. And then our dinner came, but I didn't get to eat it right away because the nurses came back in and they're like, all right, it's time, like it's been a couple hours, let's try and have baby latch. Like let's try and do some like breastfeeding, because if you're gonna breastfeed, like we need to start, you know, just trying it and learning it. So they put him on my chest and we were like trying to latch and do breastfeeding, but I started to feel really sick. I felt really awful. I was having really, really painful contractions, and I knew I was having contractions, and then I felt really dizzy and I knew I was bleeding. And I know like it's normal to bleed a lot like right after birth, but this didn't feel right. So I was holding the baby and Tyler was kind of right next to me, and I said to him, I was like, take the baby. And I knew I didn't feel right, so I handed him the baby, and then I turned to the 2 nurses that were in there and I was like, I need to go to the bathroom, I don't feel good and I'm bleeding a lot. And they were like, okay, so we'll get you up. They're like, do you need assistance? I was like, yes. So I stood up from the bed to go to the bathroom, and it was just like a waterfall of blood. Like it was the most horrific thing I've ever seen. And the whole way to the bathroom, I was just like gushing like blood and clots, and there was just a lot of blood. And I could tell in their faces like this wasn't normal either. So we get to the bathroom, and I sat on the toilet, and as soon as I sat down on the toilet, I was like, I'm gonna pass out. And the nurse was like, are you sure? And I was like, yes, like I'm gonna pass out. And I'm glad I was able to tell her that, because I did. Okay, so at this point, I didn't really like say it, but basically what's happening is I'm hemorrhaging. So I started to hemorrhage, and that's like kind of what I was feeling in the bed. And then we got to the bathroom. So I told the nurse like, hey, I feel like I'm gonna pass out. And so they like got me onto the ground, and everything is like a blur from then on. So I've pieced together what I kind of remember and then what Tyler has told me from what he experienced. So it was very scary. So I was on the bathroom floor, and I kind of remember waking up. I remember the nurses saying like, call the code, like I don't know, like I don't know the terminology, but basically like I remember her saying like, call the code, or let's get you to the bed. And so Tyler said like a few other nurses came in at that point, and they brought like this assisting thing to try and help me get back to the bed. And they like put me on it, and I like vaguely remember getting on that thing and like hearing other nurses, and I like got halfway from the bathroom to the bed and collapsed. And I remember seeing Tyler holding our baby and thinking like, that's weird, I haven't had my baby yet, like where am I? Like I just didn't know where I was. It was like a weird dream. And I like fully collapsed at that point. And so then Tyler said more nurses came rushing in, and he just like freaked out because it looked awful. Like there was just a lot of bleeding happening. I was on the ground and like totally out. I like get choked up at this too because it was very scary. And he said like I turned white, like I was totally white, my lips were blue. Like he thought that I was gone. Like he just was like, this, I can't believe it, like I'm gonna be a single dad. Like he was crying, like it was just horrific. So they brought several nurses in. They like had a stretcher at this point that they had to get me back on the bed. So they got me back on the bed, and it was just like I wasn't waking up, so they were doing the different things to try and get me to wake up. So then at that point they had to do like the ammonia or like the smelling stuff, and I do remember kind of waking up at that point too. And then at that point I remember waking up. Tyler said it was kind of a long time between like when I was out and kind of woke up, so that's why he was freaking out too, and there was just like so much bleeding. So I remember waking up because I remember smelling alcohol, which was probably the ammonia, but also they were wiping me down with alcohol pads because A, I had blood all over me, and B, my mom said that the alcohol helps constrict the blood vessels. They were like wiping me down with alcohol pads. So I remember smelling that, and I just remember seeing so many nurses in the room, and they're all like not shouting, but like saying the different things like push this. They were like giving me a shot in my leg, they were like putting stuff into my IV. So it was just a lot happening all at once, which I'm glad it did because obviously they were trying to save my life. So that was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I mean, truly, I've had an anaphylactic allergy reaction, but that was definitely worse. So then it took a while to like fully come to, and Tyler was like, you're the nicest like passed out person, because I guess I just kept saying sorry. And I do kind of remember that because I just remember there being so much blood, so I was saying sorry because I felt bad that there was just blood everywhere. Like it was not blood. But they did get everything under control, and then my doctor came back in. They called the doctor, and thankfully I didn't need a transfusion. They weren't sure if I was going to need a blood transfusion or not, but I was like, my hemoglobin was pretty low, but my doctor decided just to give like iron supplements and then like tons of fluid to try and get that to subside. So yeah, so that happened about 2 hours after birth. And since then I've just like talked to like family and like different people about it, and I just keep saying like I'm so thankful that I've had this baby in 2019 and in a hospital where it could have been way worse. Like when you think about how so many women died in childbirth, like previously, it was probably because of hemorrhaging. Like people hemorrhage and they didn't know how to stop the blood or what to do. Like they just didn't have the means to do it. So like that's why so many women died. So I'm just like really, really thankful that I was, you know, in a hospital, and it's 2019, so they can save you from a hemorrhage. So they got everything under control, and then after that I was fine. Like there was no more hemorrhaging. Actually, my bleeding was pretty light after that, and still has been kind of light because I just bled it all out at one time. But all is well that ends well. I'm okay, I'm fine, but that definitely was really, really scary to have a hemorrhage. But it's okay. So then after that, finally like was calming down, I called my mom back because I hadn't talked to her in like a couple hours, and I had been updating her regularly. So I FaceTimed my mom, and she could just see like I looked horrible. I looked pale for a long time because obviously I'd lost so much blood. So I was talking to her. She originally wasn't going to come to Oklahoma until the 10th of July. Obviously it was July 2nd that I had my baby, and so I just like broke down and was crying, like telling her about this hemorrhage and how scary it was, and she was crying too. Like it was just an emotional situation. So she was like, do you want me to come sooner? And I was like, yes. So my amazing mother and father booked a flight for my mama to come the next day, and she's been with us ever since. So she's staying for a few weeks just to help us out, and thank the Lord, because my mom is amazing. She's my best friend, but also she's a pediatric nurse, and she's just incredible. So having her here has been amazing. So she came out. But then, yeah, so that kind of was the end of the birth story. So then little Everett came back. We you know, worked on our breastfeeding, our skin to skin. I will say I stayed in the hospital for 2 days because I did hemorrhage, and then also Everett was born. I don't even think I said this. Okay, so Everett, when he was born, was 6 pounds, 1 ounce. He's a little tiny thing. He was 18.5 inches. He's so bitty. So you can see him. I'm not sure if I put me showing the baby at the beginning of the video or at the end, but he is a little bitty thing. And so because he's so teeny tiny, he was considered underweight. So there was just like a few extra steps they had to take for Everett in the hospital, and then that's why I had to stay like the full 3 days instead of going home. So I could have gone home the 3rd, but I didn't go home until the 4th because there was a few of those complications. So between hemorrhaging and then Everett being small, his glucose was low, so they had to give him like glucose and a bit of formula, which is like a whole story too. So they had to give him like a couple of milliliters of formula just because they needed to get his sugars up until he could like learn to latch and like get enough food for me. But we did work on it, and we are breastfeeding, and it's going well, and it's being successful. And it is successful. I am going to film a breastfeeding video, things I wish I knew about oh my gosh, I cannot talk anymore. The things I wish I knew about breastfeeding. So stay tuned for that. But this was Everett's birth story. So I hope you enjoyed, got all the gory details. I wanted to film this obviously like for my channel, but also because like for me, like I don't want to forget any of these details or all the things that happened, because it was just obviously an amazing experience to have my firstborn son. So yeah, that's really cool. So this is my baby. Oh my gosh. He's sleeping because he's a newborn, and that's what newborns do. They sleep all the time. But this is my little munchkin. Oh, I've disturbed his slumber, but let's see if I can get him. But here he is. Oh, really? He's literally perfect. Can you see him? He's so cute. He's So he is 6 pounds 1 ounce. Actually, now he's 5 pounds 13 ounces. So we did lose a little bit of his birth weight. So when we brought him home, he was 5 pounds 13 ounces. And then when we had his 1 week appointment, he was back to 5 pounds 13 ounces. So they were really happy with his growth. Like I said, he's 18.5 inches, so he's a little peanut. So yeah, this is my baby. I am so in love with him. So is Tyler. I mean, we're all in love with him. How can you not be? He is the cutest thing on the planet. And he's such a little snuggle bug. He's got his little arm like right across his chest. But yeah, he loves his hands by his face. Sorry, I'm disturbing your slumber. So that is my birth story. Thank you so much for watching. If you did, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment because I'd love to chat with you there. Definitely follow me on Instagram. It's becca.n.collins. I am definitely posting pretty regularly about like my postpartum journey on there and also all the baby pictures. So definitely follow me on Instagram. I'll leave it down below as well. But if not. But anyway, follow me on Instagram. Also subscribe here because there's gonna be lots of videos like surrounding baby, postpartum, my journey, all of that. So stay tuned for those videos and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I just want to stare at him all day. I'm sorry, Munchkin. Okay, that's your update. I gotta go feed this little Munchkin.